Welcome to Les Hijas, the podcast where we celebrate the courage, leadership of Chicana women. I'm Dulce, and today we'll be diving into the Chicano movement and how Chicana voices continue to empower our community in 2024. Joining me are
Avery,
Sammy,
Yesenia,
Sophie.
So the Chicano movement gained momentum in the 1960s and was pivotal in advocating for the rights of Mexican Americans to try and address social inequalities they were facing. We know a lot about the male figures in the movement, like Cesar Chavez, who led movements for farm workers, and Corky Gonzalez, who helped lead Chicano youth conferences. These men often dominate discussions of the movement, whereas contributions of women remain less acknowledged. Today we want to explore the essential role that Chicanos played in the movement, and we want to highlight their struggles for identity and gender equality to show their activism continues to inspire modern political engagement.
So Chicana women didn't wait for permission to lead. They claimed leadership in their communities. Figures like Deborah Espinosa balanced activism with family roles, often negativity and cultural expectations that challenged their visibility as leaders.
Okay, guys, let's talk about women leader. So Deborah, she was a notable activist and educator, and she was recognized for her contributions to the Chicano movement and her work in advocating for social justice, particularly in educational reform and rights of marginalized communities. And guys, she went through a lot, like racism, sexism, and the challenges of advocating for the rights of Chicano and Latino communities. Like, that's insane.
That's so true. Many of the male leaders didn't take them seriously. Their concerns about gender equality were way too high, but only for the women.
Yeah, so what Dulce and Sammy just talked about, we found in the source Chicana Power, Female Leaders in El Movimiento and the Search for Identity by Alan Noah. And I feel like it's so important to kind of talk about how they stepped into leadership roles in a space that's so dominated by men. And the success stories of Deborah and how she's now a longtime coordinator of the History Colorado's El Pueblo Museum. And she's keeping the legacy of the Chicano movement going and encouraging activism in her everyday life, which I feel is so important for younger generations to know about. Another woman in the source was also Lisa Flores, and we see her influencing the next generation of Chicanos through her activism on the Denver Public Schools Board of Education. And we know that this is a position of power that she has, she can voice for students. And I feel it's also important to recognize that she got her inspiration from her mother, which shows part of their history of the ongoing legacy of fights for rights and gender equality.
Flores was involved in organizing and in raising awareness around issues such as police brutality, immigration reformance, and representation of marginalized communities in media and policies. Her activism is rooted in the principles of equality, cultural pride, and the dismantling of systems of oppression that disproportionately affected Latinx people, especially Chicano-Latinx youth.
Based on the source, the Chicana Power Female Leaders in El Movimiento, Deborah states, as far as Chicanas, we were present and vocal, but we still weren't in leadership positions. In fact, we were kind of shunned into the women's movement, which was a white movement. We understand the basics of it, and this is just such an important point because
representation?
Yeah, was power. When Chicana women led, it just showed how the community was way closer and way more powerful than when men led it compared to we could compare this to now.
I feel it kind of connects to today with the election and Kamala Harris and how literally historically there's never not been barely Barack Obama, but every other president has been a white man. And so she pursued taking those leadership roles, and I feel there's so it empowered so many women to see someone like that in pursuing that type of position.
It's so powerful to see how Chicana feminine shaped border social movements even when it was contested. Speaking of tribalization, women, let's turn to one of the most iconic figures, Dolores Huerta. Let's introduce the source. Conversation with Dolores Huerta.
So, y'all didn't know, Dolores But that was a prominent labor leader and a civil rights activist, and she co-founded United Farm Workers, aka UFW, and it basically empowered migrant farm workers, and it helped to improve their wages and working conditions, and that's a huge accomplishment because it gave migrant workers a powerful voice in the United States, and they didn't have much power to begin with.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so important to have someone so powerful representing them. I feel like that was really important for them. And something that I found really interesting in the source was Sammy mentioned she was advocating for the rights of workers, and she recalls the efforts that she put into just addressing fundamental human rights. And one of the laws that she got, I don't know, put into action was to just have restrooms and toilets on the fields that the workers could access, which before was not a law, which is crazy to think about, that they just didn't have anywhere to even just go to the bathroom, which is just shows what they were put under, the conditions.
It's insane.
Yeah, that's one thing that stands out to me about Huerta. She overcame many of those challenges that she was fighting for, but she also overcame many of the criticism she faced within the movement, just like many Chicana activists that we have talked about. But that never stopped her. No, whatever someone would say outside the movement never stopped her. She knew that her voice and her leadership would make a change, and that's the resistance that we can all learn from today.
Talking about the whole restroom thing kind of reminds me of the documentary that we watched, The Walkout, where Paula was one of the activists, and then she was trying to fight for the students' rights of using the restrooms during lunch or during recess and stuff.
Something else I feel is important is that obviously she's a very powerful leader, but she also went through her own struggles, and her activism wasn't perfect because she had to make a lot of sacrifices that a lot of people either overlook or they criticize her for. And she had to quit her job as a teacher, and she was a single mother with 7 children who she had to leave for work. I think we watched a video in class that talked about her children and how in childhood it was really hard to not have their mom there, but they knew it was for a bigger cause and they're proud of their mom.
For our second source, our article's name is Chicano Power, Contested Histories of Feminism in the Chicano Movement in 2014, written by Jackie Cuevas. Mm-hmm. And it explores the evolving role of feminism within the Chicano movement.
Chicana women fall on 2 sides, not against the racism of the world and the sexism in their own movement. Jackie Cuevas' book dives into that, how many male leaders dismiss Chicana's voices. Feminists like Sean A. and Margarita Orozco had to balance between the loyalty to their culture while also rooting for all the gender equality within and outside. For example, Orozco was very vocal about how women's issues were often overlooked, even though Chicanas were equally involved in organizing the protests, the strikes, and even all the community programs.
We can see this blatant sexism played out in Cuevas' work when she states, 2 men dressed in brown berets gear ogling a woman while telling her, "You might get to be a movement princess." Chicana women have to fight against these norms, resisting this marginalization while fighting as assert their leadership. This defines the activism of many Chicanas.
I feel the those issues definitely exist today, and we named our podcast after this group, and so we can talk about Las Hijas. What they formed over was the response to female students being denied taking leadership roles in Chicana student organizations. And though the group no longer exists, we still want to emphasize the values that this group had inspiring Chicanas to step into leadership roles.
So, and this reminds me and brings me back memories of machismo, which means that males think they're more better than women's, and I feel that is not the need or the meaning, because I feel women's, they're stronger by themselves, and yeah.
All of these sources are part of our goal to revitalize the Chicano movement.
It's all about building on the legacy and using like modern tools right now, like social media, to empower and bring back the Chicano movement. Chicana activists today, like Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, are taking leadership in government now. And most of the voices that are being heard are because of the platforms of Instagram and TikTok that are like very powerful for communities and raising awareness and organizing new protests for the Chicano movement.
And then, so another example is that voting is another area where we see this legacy in action. In 2024, groups like Voto Latino, led by Maria Teresa Kumar, are continuing that work. They ensure that young Latinos, including Chicanas, understand the power of their vote and how it can influence issues like immigration reforms, healthcare access, and criminal justice.
Yeah, guys, I think it's really cool. I think it's just amazing how the Chicano movement, like, it hasn't died. Like, it's even today, like, they're still fighting for it, and that all of these, like, empowering women Chicano leaders, that their work has not gone to waste. Like, it has empowered young women today, and it makes them just want to keep on, like, fighting for what's their equal rights and just make the world better each day.